Charles, it's the special Superb Owl episode. Sorry, I got a bunch of things going on over here.
No worries.
The Superb Owl, Charles.
And I got to get, we're going to have to cut this short because after the show, I've got to get on my hypersonic jet and get down to the game, because I've got to pitch in and do my best to help the Chiefs win.
Exactly. I think that people are going to appreciate how handsome you look in the football helmet on this Superb Owl Sunday with Charles.
Well, that could be because it's covering up much of my face.
That was not the intention at all. But, this is a good alternative, I think, to the mainstream entertainment for people who perhaps don't care about the Superb Owl, something that, I don't know, many people will consider like blasphemous of me to say that.
Well, actually, I'm not much of a football enthusiast, and I remember back in college, I tried to, and of course the school I went to didn't have much of a football team, but I tried to get immersed in it, and it just, Super Bowl after Super Bowl was just so boring. This, however, from what I can tell, and I'm hardly an expert on it, is shaping up to be quite a battle because the San Francisco 49ers team has historically been quite strong in the past, and there's a new superstar at this Kansas City Chiefs quarterback who's really a sensational player and a great leader. So it could be quite a good game, and we'll get done well before kickoff.
Great. All right. So this is a good alternative for people to watch before they watch the Superb Owl.
And we're not making any suggestions about what you should do while you're having those snacks that you're going to have a lot of from 6:30 forward. But that being said, the art department is really, this is just incredible what you've put together here. This is certainly T-shirt worthy, right? It's certainly T-shirt worthy.
Yeah, not that many people historically have bought any of the T-shirts or merchandise that I've made available. I recently got into a special program on Patreon where people who become sponsors at the $25 per month or higher level, basically after 3 months of sponsorship, are going to get a free coffee mug with Robert Mueller ordering his Nothing Burger. I think everybody is pretty familiar with that piece of artwork. But $25 a month is a lot for people, I think. I'm trying to work with Patreon to get them to, maybe lower that down and extend it over a few months. I do want people to sponsor the show, and I can't carry on without the viewer sponsorship. So I always encourage people, even if they're only watching Sunday with Charles, which is free, of course, on YouTube, I always like to encourage them to go to Subscribestar or Patreon.
Sure.
And, there's been a really, really active effort to try to remove Crowdsource the Truth from YouTube and from the social media world in general. I even received a threatening text message from someone who had previously claimed to be a friend of the show, revealing his obvious nature as a social engineer. So I'm not one to respond to threats. People should do whatever it is that they want to do, and I'll respond in kind with the legal process that seems to be going my way, Charles.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, good luck, of course, and but just back to this poster itself. This is people might recognize Bill Clinton in despite the sunglasses and the goofy hat. His joint mate, who should in fact
it's a joint venture, Charles.
Who should become his joint mate is John Hope Bryant, and we're going to spend some time going into some shocking new developments that friends of the show have made aware, and I think there are many stories, and maybe Michael Bloomberg wasn't somebody who grew up disadvantaged, but he certainly has gone from no material wealth to now being a multi-billionaire.
I thought he was pretty poor. The story I've always heard was that he was like sweeping up the mailroom or something before he bought the whole...
Could be, but I'm just saying, in this country, if you have talent, real talent, and you have gumption, and you come up with, you perceive a need that is either not being met at all or is being met poorly by the existing competition, and you go in and you fill that need, and you're persistent, and after you invest in this venture, you start continuing, hopefully, a long life lifelong program of spending less money than you earn, you can actually, over a lifetime of 65 years, I mean, you could amass substantial wealth just by being prudent, always spending less than you earn on living, and then putting savings sensibly into projects that you believe have a good risk-return relationship.
This is crazy, Charles. I've been living by the notion of just put everything on the credit card and barely have enough money to pay it off.
Right, yeah, that's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
But in the case of John Hope Bryant, there are many poor, and let's not restrict it to minority people, just disadvantaged people, whether you are you grew up hard-scrabble poor in Appalachia, or as I guess some call it Appalachia.
Where the mafia was first discovered.
Yeah.
That's true.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Whether you grow up in those circumstances or in the ghetto or you're Hispanic or Asian or whatever, it doesn't matter. The principle is that in this country, again, if you perceive an unmet need that's a lawful service or a lawful product, you can actually amass a considerable fortune. And if you stick to it, if you're the kind of person who believes in your dream, and where others want to take you away from work and have you do stuff on the weekends, you roll up your sleeves or do whatever it is women might
roll up your joint. And
yeah, you can actually do really well. But in the case of John Hope Bryant, I think and fear that his entire life story is a fraud.
Charles, the alternative to hard work and perseverance, people trying to create their own business that satisfies a product or service, you could just run for Congress and steal money until you're 65 and be a multimillionaire.
Or president, even better, yeah. Which is what I think Hillary is deciding whether she needs to do or not. But the art department, again, this is a triumph. And I could imagine a series in this. I mean, this is
Cheech and Chong movies.
Yeah, well, I just think, the image is so. This is a kind of image which, for me, if I were in the mood to start adding to art collections, I would think about, this could be 6 or 8 very interesting images in a theme. I think, but really well done. And of course,
Andrew, sorry to interrupt, Charles, but this is a relevant question. Andrew Minton is asking why I seem to be targeted more than X22, BCP, Red Pill, etc. I don't know, but maybe it's possible that those people aren't talking about or to the same people that I am, and I'm obviously doing something that somebody doesn't like.
Well, and on the subject of being targeted, we were talking just before airtime commenced that John Solomon, and I've sent you an email, John Solomon apparently has definitely been over the target for a while, and news has just come out in Gateway Pundit that he was had parked his car apparently in Washington, D.C., and professional thieves went into the car and stole some of the evidence that he had amassed, which is described as explosive evidence.
Professional thieves. Where does Hillary Clinton find the time, Charles?
Exactly. Well, she's got grandchildren. She's probably putting them into the business. Who would suspect a little 3-year-old toddler, breaking through the side of a car?
They've got very thin fingers. They can get into that stuff. You give a Slim Jim to a 3-year-old, and you might as well call it a day.
Well, actually, just a side note, when my daughter was very young, the whole family was out skiing in Deer Valley, and she actually broke into our rental car for us. She was small enough. Well, we got it into a place where she could break into the car. No one else could get into it.
What are they advertising here on Gateway Pundit?
That's an awful picture of Dianne.
It's a campaign ad for Hillary.
It's an awful picture of Dianne Feinstein, actually.
Yeah.
But
so thieves break into John Solomon's car the night before the impeachment trial, steal a laptop containing explosive information on Ukraine and Joe Biden.
There seems to be a lot of this. Thieves breaking into cars, thieves breaking into, was it a motorcycle during the 2016 thing?
Yeah. I wonder if things aren't being placed in certain unsecured locations and maybe letting the thieves know that they can gain pretty easy access to it. One of the things I wanted to mention, Charles, before we get into the show for today, while we're speaking about Joe Biden and Burisma evidence, while we were in Norway, I had the opportunity to interview John Mark Dugan, who people will recall is the Palm Beach County Sheriff's deputy who created PBSOTalk.org, which was a website for whistleblowers to reveal corruption within the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, and he became sort of a hub for this type of sensitive information. John's been in touch with a person who was a high-level executive at Burisma who has documents and evidence that are, as John Solomon's evidence may have been, pretty devastating to the Bidens. And John is trying to get some money together on this GoFundMe here to bring the Burisma whistleblower to Russia out of Ukraine. A lot of people have asked why an executive at Burisma would need money to do that. And I spoke with John this morning, and he reminded me that salaries in Ukraine are nowhere near what they are in the United States. And I actually knew that because my former brother-in-law worked at a bank or something. You know, he had like a decent job. He was making less money than someone would make, you know, working as a waiter or a janitor or something.
Well, on that subject, without revealing who, on one of my many trips to Ukraine, we sat down with professors. Mm-hmm. And they explained to us, they said, listen, it was a very comical evening. And they said, listen, the professor says to my friend, we're going to give you some friendly advice.
Yeah.
You know those resumes that come out of Ukraine? Don't believe any of them. Because we professors, we make nothing. So of course, you want an A? There's a price for that. You know, and so Ukraine is notoriously corrupt. And the notion that the vice president would allow any member of his extended family to have anything commercial to do in Ukraine is just, it shows you why Biden, he would not win. What was that show? Are you smart enough to beat a third grader?
Smarter than a fifth grader.
Or fifth grader or whatever. I mean, he wouldn't fare well against the nursery school crowd.
Yeah, he's certainly a dope. And I'm delighted to see him basically falling on his face. But, the other thing I noticed when I went to Ukraine in 2003, Charles, is that at the supermarket, like a rotisserie chicken was like $4 or $5, pretty much regular price. Things like gasoline were super expensive. And like booze and cigarettes were like $1.
Yeah, they got their priorities straight.
Well, I'm not joking. I think I noticed the same thing in Brazil. It's very expensive. The tolls on the road, gasoline, car insurance, all that stuff is super expensive. And what it does is it basically keeps people in these kind of localized little do-nothing towns, smoking cigarettes, drinking booze, watching FIFA, not dissimilar from the superb owl that many people will be enjoying today. But if they can keep people placated with these sort of low-end distractions, they don't want everybody getting in their car and driving to Maidan Square and having a revolution.
Well, that's the stark contrast that when President Trump does give his State of the Union speech, whenever that does occur, he's going to start drawing that contrast, that he and I think non-establishment members in the main of the Republican Party, conservatives, would like to see an America in which people chase their dreams responsibly and are not dependent on government, whereas the Democrats, in particular Hillary and Obama and Pelosi and Schiff, they want to keep voters dependent on government. They want to keep them down, depressed, angry, thinking that they only a powerful government can help them get out of the rut. When in reality, you look around at all the countries in the world that have said, give me more power in government, give me more power in government. The dictators live well, and I think the Democrats are trying to put the dick in dictators.
Yeah, well, they put it in a lot of things. Did you see the Rudy Giuliani Common Sense podcast where he interviewed Victor Shokin, the prosecutor?
I think I have a link into it. But
it was great.
Yeah. I mean, of course, one thing we're learning through all this is that there's standard tricks. I think we could almost get ready for our Jeopardy game eventually, but there's standard dirty tricks that the Clintons use and the Obamas use.
Right.
Missing things that, missing evidence that helps their case when it's missing, or stealing evidence, destroyed evidence. Whatever the Clintons or Obamas accuse you of doing, that's what they're doing. You learn this in time. When you hear they need to appoint a special prosecutor, of course he's going to be a drunk and corrupt. if it comes out of their side. And just go on and on and on. When they start attacking somebody for being in league with whoever it is, quote, the Russians, that's because they don't want you to know that they're in league with, criminal elements among the Russians. So it fools a lot of people. It fooled 63 million people, if that's how many people actually voted for Hillary Clinton or 66, whatever the number was, in 2016.
Is that what they say? 66 million people?
I forget if it was 63 to 30 or 66 to 63, but it was, somebody got 63 million. I forget.
It's a lot of sixes and threes in there, Charles. I don't know
exactly.
how they come up with these numbers. They sort of pull them out of the sky. But people are really enjoying this Rudy Giuliani podcast. It's a really, it's an interesting time where, obviously, before the age of podcasting, which is still really pretty new, somebody like Rudy Giuliani, if CNN or Fox didn't want to have him on there, he would never be able to do that. And certainly that extended interview with Shokin, that would never go out on television. They would show you one sentence of what he said that was edited to suit the narrative of what they're trying to say. I always wondered, how do we know that this guy is corrupt? It seems like Joe Biden said he was corrupt, but Rudy and Mr. Shokin pointed out there's never been any charge against him of corruption. He's never appeared in court or on trial, accused of corruption. They basically just came to him and said, look, we're not going to get this $1 billion unless you get fired. And he said, to help his country, he stepped down from his own job. And then they poisoned him with mercury.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they hold very strong cards. They believe they hold quite strong cards, but I think we're seeing now no other president that I'm aware of in my living history has been subjected to the kind of onslaught that Donald Trump was subjected to from the moment the election results were made known, late whenever it was, early Wednesday morning after the election in 2016, and still this guy is persevering and not bowed under and plowing ahead on multiple fronts around the world. If you remember back to Davos as one example, in 2017, the lamestream press was making a huge deal about the fact that the leader of China was getting a tremendous reception and Donald Trump wasn't going to get the same reception as the leader in China. The leader in China right now, I would not want to have his cards. He is leader of the Communist Party, I believe, but the Communist Party is 10% of the population, and the other 90% ain't too happy.
Well, the other part of the story they're not telling you, Charles, is that the Chinese leader gets great reception because Huawei controls all the cell phone towers.
That's probably right.
Everybody else gets nothing.
But honestly, you look at we'll talk a little bit later about this, but if you look at the problems that the Chinese have, everyone says scale is an advantage. Scale is an advantage to a point, but when you have a country that's 4 times the population or more of the United States, we don't know if the population statistics are accurate in China or here, but especially in China, that's tough to manage. 4 times the number of people who are now increasingly available to use social media and find out the truth. And, suddenly they see how the central government treats some of the richest people in China and Hong Kong. They see that. They now hear about this disaster in Wuhan and who knows wherever else it's going to spread to. And, it doesn't seem to me as if this government's all that magnanimous to its own people.
You don't think hitting them in the face with the butt of rifles or spraying them with fire hoses is magnanimous?
No, I don't think that's magnanimous at all.
Oh, that's nice.
And so he's now trying to run a country where the natives are restless in Hong Kong. People are throwing their pets. It's horrible because they're concerned that the pets will transmit the virus or a pet will come into another pet who has the virus.
What are they doing to the pets?
They're throwing them off the apartment balconies. And it's pandemonium over there.
Who would do that to their own pet?
Well, if you thought the pet was going to kill your children or yourself.
Oh my God.
I'm not
how
saying,
about euthanizing it? I don't know. This isn't
anyway, the degree of difficulty, the people I remember, and I won't pick on these individual people, although I could, but the books that were coming out of the mainstream press about how America has so much to learn from China and the Chinese are already overtaking the United States and it's going to be the most significant market. Come on. It's just, I don't wish the Chinese people any ill will. I wish there were a way that the United States medical team could be helpful over there, but I fear that if you're going to lie about the extent of the problem, and you're going to lie about, when you actually knew about this and why you waited so long to tell people, there are a lot of people flying in that holiday season over Christmas and our New Year.
To China.
Back and forth to China, students in America, Chinese students in America that went back home and vice versa. And if it turns out they lied about this and they knew about it in early December, for example, and waited until now to raise the alarm, I mean.
What about Bill Gates? It seems that there's a patent for this coronavirus, and it's linked to a company that's owned by Bill Gates. He's big on vaccines. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a mandatory coronavirus vaccine. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't people getting sick and that it's not dangerous, but I just never believe anything they tell us about this. And I think last week we showed the first story that I had seen about coronavirus said that China was quarantining 33 million people. So what's that about?
Yeah, 33 million, yeah.
I mean, it's the message in the story.
Yeah, I think I look at it from a slightly different perspective, having spent a lot of time advising companies in the airline industry. When an airline makes a decision to cease flying between two of the most important markets in the world, China and America, for months, that is a momentous decision. I mean, that is, the capacity that will be taken offline now in the airline industry, and then the ripple effects of, if airline pilots and executives are saying, we won't take the personal risk of going into China.
The public certainly won't.
The public certainly won't, and then the cascading effects of it. And it's not like the Chinese airlines are prudently capitalized. I mean, they have, who knows the true financial picture of these airlines? Very easy to put a lot of debt on an airline and disguise it in a lease and off-balance sheet techniques. So you take a heavily leveraged airline and then start saying, well, by the way, you're not going to be able to use those expensive planes that are on lease, that you have to pay the interest payments to the bank. It just takes a long time to recover from something like that. And the profit margins and balance sheets are not really strong enough. So that our own airlines, Delta, United, and American, as last I heard, would make that decision. And that other airlines around the world are also making the decision. It tells me there's probably more risk here than we assume.
Screaming in the hallway, that's totally normal.
Right. Just back from China.
There was a photo I had seen of some scientists checking out passengers. Here it is. They were scanning the passengers on the planes. I'm wondering, Charles, perhaps there's an opportunity. Boeing has had some hard times. Perhaps they could reintroduce the 727, and if you're found to have SARS or coronavirus, they chuck you out the back. Problem solved.
Problem not solved.
Do you find it strange that they're tiling out the masks? I guess it must have some. That is strange. It must have some.
It probably has some sign on it that says
who they're
biohazard or something.
No, it probably says, Microsoft or whatever right there.
Well, I just think people, when we just got back from this trip to Norway, and it was very interesting for me anyway to meet the people we met and to have the time together over there. And but that being said, travel is a disruptive thing, and technology is in place now to make most meetings possible via Skype or the internet or other means. And so you could really see quite a devastating financial impact from all this.
Yeah. Well, and many people have suggested the possibility that that could be intentional.
Yeah, we'll see.
So with that, Charles, I'm sure you've got an extensive, as always, presentation prepared for us today.
So why don't we get into it? We go to there is, much like the Biden gambit that cynics would say, we've got a piece on it. The cynics would say that the reason he announced, despite Barack Obama's suggestion that he not do it, was to have the potential predicate in place that if he's a candidate, then the pro-impeachment crowd can use what Trump was doing with Ukraine against Trump. Similarly, raising your profile, as John Hope Bryant has done, to create a brand around his name and to virtue signal his supposed charitable good works, should not be an excuse that causes federal, state, and foreign regulators to look past what I believe is mammoth, unprosecuted criminal activity, both in the narrow way in which he and his people have been running a supposed charity, and in the broader way in which donors to his charity have been exploiting the themes that Bryant is selling to dust off their own images, and in certain cases, I think, to develop business for the accounting firms and the law firms and the banks that are around this epic set of frauds. I mean, think of the Clinton Global Initiative, and you have the Hope Global Forum and the various gatherings that John Hope gets together, where he is deified as this guy who at age 26 gets involved in the charity business. He's made enough money. No one has ever been able to...
Charity business?
Well, no one has yet been able to explain to me how a person who evidently came from modest circumstances out there by 1992, which was a difficult period. Remember, in 87 we had a financial crash. In 89 we had a financial crash. In 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. It took until 1991 to liberate Kuwait, and then we had all sorts of issues in that time frame. How somebody by 92, age 26, could have made legitimately enough money to lay down his fantastic career and spend the rest of his time in charity stinks to high heaven to me. I don't believe that, and I certainly don't see any proof of that in the filings that are on file in California and in New York for his original charity, which was called Operation Los Angeles Hope. Mm-hmm. And the subsequent filings, all subsequent filings to date, are replete with massive errors, massive uncorrected errors, massive violation of state and federal laws. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But what we're here today to reveal is John Hope Bryant has now, and I don't begrudge somebody multiple marriages, maybe I'll have a second marriage, but he's on his third marriage, and he's got this father-in-law who holds himself out as being, quote, a doctor.
Right.
Dr. David Dalton. David
Dr.
Lee
what?
Dalton. And we're going to get into some of these details. And Dr. David Lee Dalton has made some extremely bad decisions in his life, which he's been trying to hide, and which we're going to discuss in this broadcast. This is a problem for John Hope Bryant because John Hope Bryant has decided that running a charity gives him an excuse to pay himself a very high salary and large travel expenses to swan around the world at various venues with his wife. The second you start doing that, it becomes relevant. The second you start involving your father-in-law in charity promotions, your father-in-law's record becomes germane in these public filings. And so the public filings, just at the basic level, as we'll explain in some more detail momentarily, they are defective. By their own admission, they're in the process of refiling 2017 filings, which have not yet been refiled properly, as far as I can see. Amending those filings, it may be necessary, likely will prove necessary for Operation Hope to not simply amend 17, but to go way back at the time to amend federal filings, state filings, and foreign filings. And I question whether you can even do that. 17
filings?
2017.
2017.
Yeah. So we have, I think, a charity fraud here, an unprosecuted set of charity frauds that has problems at state level, federal level, foreign level. And sadly, I think we have associated bank and stock swindles. And I put that term swindle in there because that is actually a criminal, there's a section of the law that deals with swindles, and that's what we're talking about. A swindle, in part, is when you hold yourself out as being something that you're not, and you take an element of value from the public under false pretenses, and you steal it, you're in serious trouble.
That's swindling.
That's swindling. I talked to Bill Clinton. He knows how to do that.
Yeah.
As does Hillary, as does Chelsea. So another point here, when you get into this, and I wish I had known this a while ago, there's a very significant difference between a public charity and a private foundation. A public charity is, unfortunately for John Hope Bryant and his father-in-law and his wife, that's what he's been running, a public charity. Public charity cannot serve a personal interest. I mean, there are strict laws on the books for government officials cannot derive a private gain from their office. Similarly, because a public charity stands in the shoes of government, officers, trustees, key employees of a public charity absolutely cannot get rich off a charity. And you could look at this, as I think it's fair to do, cynically, and say that the Operation Hope exists to promote the brand of John Hope Bryant, not to do anything positive, or not, and it certainly does not seem to have done much positive for the underprivileged communities of Los Angeles, which is the only geographic area where he was supposed to operate. So we've said before as well that the standard for private gain, it's not like you can go and say, well, I've raised $100 million in my charity, so I'll just give myself 20. 20. That's not the way it works. You're not.
Doesn't he have a ton of money from selling candy?
Candy. That's right. The candy man, we should call him.
Booger sugar? What's the candy?
I don't know. I don't know. Pickup sticks, I guess.
We know it's Bill Clinton's favorite kind of candy, according to Roger Clinton.
Exactly. And that's just one of his favorite types of candy. Yeah. But so the first issue is, how much private gain can a public charity create in total? And various court cases and decisions have held that a private gain created by the operation of a public charity of more than $1,000, really several $100s, is not allowed. You cannot do that. This has to be substantially, there cannot be more than a quote insubstantial amount of private gain. An insubstantial amount has been held to be several $100s. So more than that, a big problem. And on top of which, it's not like you set up a public charity, you say, you know what, since I'm now in the philanthropy business, those laws and regulations that are out there, those are for the little people. I'm too busy doing the public good and coming up with slogans that make sense and initiatives that sound pretty and gatherings that are great and giving myself and others awards and receiving awards. No, you've got to comply, your charity does, with all applicable laws and regulations, which is a further point that the trustees, and we're going to expose, there's one trustee who's been shooting his mouth off for 40 years. And
Trustee of the Operation
Hope, who's a big gun. We're going to reveal who he is at the end of the broadcast, who is at the center of fake news in this country.
Really?
Yeah. He's a gigantic guy. He's been on this Operation Hope board for a long time. His company is providing, I think, illegal aid to this criminal operation in the form of free media, actual media partnership, et cetera. It's a very large media company.
Wow.
And it's owned by one of the biggest companies in the world. We're going to get into it at the end of the broadcast.
That's a little bit of a cliffhanger episode.
Exactly.
You know, Charles, just to get back to the coronavirus for a moment, the Corona Beer Company has been very careful to make sure that everybody knows they have nothing to do with it. They renamed the beer to Ebola Extra, trying to avoid association with the outbreak.
Very well done.
Not mine, but a good meme worth sharing.
That's very well done.
Yeah.
Good. So we could go to that next thing. That's fine. For your new viewers and for people who may have forgotten about this approach we're taking, you pointed out that Giuliani's approach is different than the standard television approach. So too is our approach.
I think he watched this and got some ideas.
Yeah, maybe. But the idea here is that we've, I think, it's unfair to call it the mother lode, but it is a gigantic scandal. And we realized, you and I did a while back, that there would be no way to cover it in a video format without chopping it into bite-sized pieces, which we've done now. I think this is our 205th video. It says 202 in there, but I think this is 205. And what we do with the videos, which Jason has put in this nice playlist for people, is we give you links to supporting slide presentations. So either during this podcast or afterwards, if you want to review it, you can pull down these slides. You can, if you do so in electronic form, you can follow the links. Here's the handy dandy playlist. It's actually quite intimidating. There's so many of them.
Now, is it up to date, or we're missing the one from Norway? The playlist was incapacitated for a while because, as I've mentioned, these social engineers are constantly sniping at me and trying to shut down the YouTube channel. They achieved some degree of success the past couple weeks. People might have noticed there were no new videos being uploaded. Right now, we're unable to live stream on the Jason Goodman YouTube channel. That's the main home of Crowdsource the Truth. If people are watching the live stream right now, it's 3:36 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, and we're live streaming on Crowdsource the Truth 2, which is the backup YouTube channel. People who are watching there can utilize Super Chat. You can also watch on Periscope and Facebook and Patreon, subscribe to all of our other platforms. But for right now, the social engineers are constantly attacking the Jason Goodman channel, and they've made it publicly known. They've also now had one of their associates send me a private threat via text message that they intend to completely eliminate Crowdsource the Truth by next week. So I hope that people will help us avoid that fate. And I also want to remind everybody that we're broadcasting now, Charles, at full HD, 1080p, and high bit rate. So constantly trying to improve the show, and people can get into some of the details that we show in the artwork as well as the text in your presentations on a big screen TV at higher quality. And you were mentioning that people can download the presentations. It's important that everybody understands that you can go into the video description. You may need to click that little show more, but there's always going to be, or I should say almost always, a link right here that says download Charles's presentation. And when that link is clicked, it brings you to the PDF. You've got this little download icon here. You could save it to your computer, print it out, send it to Congress, ask Mark Meadows where John Huber was when this evidence was presented. Do whatever you like.
Yeah. So that's great, Jason. And on the question of the two missing ones, there's the one from Norway and there's the closing in we just did that are not up there.
Yeah, I'll add those.
I'm just saying those are the two. And the approach we take, as I say, is this is not a show for people who want distilled opinion. This is a show where we're trying to engage people who are concerned. They see the Clinton, Obama, Bush frauds for what they are. They see unregulated globalism for the, what we call it feudalism, F-U-T-I-L-I-S-M. They see it for what it is, and they see as well people have a thirst, I think, in both parties. You see it now. The Democrats are eating their young in the Bernie versus Bloomberg battle. We'll talk about that. And people are running away from the establishment Republicans. I mean, with good reason. I'm one of the people who's running away from them. And so instead of getting party lines out of the mainstream media, what we try to provide you with are the pieces of evidence that have helped me shape my thinking, Jason his thinking. And we provide this all to you. I encourage you, if you agree with our approach, to share it with your friends. Share it with somebody who might be spouting the never Trump line, but can't marshal any arguments why Trump isn't good for America, given the rise in the stock market, the improving economy, rising wages, all the good, and our improving relative standing on the world stage. You find people like that, clue them into the show and give them one or more of these episodes to think about. And we've found over time that even though Google may be trying to suppress the audience for this show and Twitter might be trying to suppress, and Facebook, et cetera, there just seems to be a natural growth, a hunger for the type of work we're doing here, and a growing enthusiasm, frankly, for the reforms that Trump and people like Trump are now carrying out around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm being asked right now on Periscope by Alan if he can contact me privately by email or Twitter DM. The answer is yes. People can always reach me on truth@crowdsourcethetruth.org. People can also contact either myself or Charles via Twitter DM, right? Yeah, Charles has the DMs open there on Twitter, so people can, if you're not following Charles, he's on Twitter @Charles Ortel, so that's very easy to remember, and you can hit him on the DM thing right there. People can also follow me @CSTheTruth on Twitter. It's a good idea because, that way you can be in touch even if you're just not using it that often. If anything happens to the YouTube channel or to Crowdsource the Truth that might prevent you from getting to the information, I would, of course, post about that on Twitter and elsewhere. So it's a good way to stay in touch.
Great. Good. So with that, perhaps we could jump in. This law, I mean, we've been waiting for Brexit to actually happen. And the first link is a good story about why why Brexit, the fact that Brexit is now formally in process, why that's a good thing. I mean, so many of the swamp monsters, the globalist swamp monsters, remain all in for the program of having, in addition to bloated socialist governments across Europe and in other countries, having even more bloated regional and now international government agencies suck the lifeblood out of the current taxpayers and future generations of taxpayers with their crazy schemes that nobody evaluates responsibly. And here, the folks in Britain went through 2 votes, I think, and more than 2 votes, I guess, and ultimately prevailed in a process that will take the next 11 months, I believe, to move along, hopefully to a real formal split. And I think what you're going to see here is that...
Well,
what?
Look at the vote, 330 to... It's always there, Charles. They just, I mean, come on.
So what this means is that countries, for example, like Italy and other countries still in the EU are going to take a look at this and say, you know, we don't want to be the last person standing in the EU. And then I think as well, the tension is going to shift to the UN. So how many more fancy banquets do we need to host here in New York or in Geneva or Nairobi or wherever they have UN offices to have people fly in on their private jets and give statements that are meaningless and fund expensive lifestyles and have the poorest of the world's poor get even poorer as against the richest and the middle class around the world. I mean, the UN, the EU, so many of these systems make little sense today. They've demonstrated over decades that there seem to be little more than excuses for high-end gatherings and parties. I mean, you really have to question in the disruptive age in which we live, where it is possible to broadcast to the world as we are now doing, with modest investment, modest capital investment. Why in the hell do we need to bring people to the UN General Assembly in New York and clog up all the restaurants and clog up all the fancy hotels then have sidebar conversations, as the Clinton Global Initiative used to do, where the grifters around the world could get together with these politicians and concoct deals to pay the politicians off once they leave office. I mean, it's so obviously something that needs to be stopped.
What about that guy who raped the maid?
Yeah, Dominic Strauss-Kahn.
Right. So maybe that's a reason they have to be here in person to rape the maids.
Well, some say
that
was
a setup. Not do it.
Some say that was a setup to get him out of there. But
oh, really?
Yeah. Anyway, so Brexit, I think, is the significance of it will play out. But now that we actually have the formal Brexit going, I think we need to go revisit this thing that happened in the last 4 days or so, or a week ago, where the Sunday Times reported that Nigel West, who's described here as one of Britain's leading experts on espionage, says the dossier is completely wrong, 100%
Why did he wait
false.
this long to say that if he's such an expert?
Well, I don't know, but I think it was because there was this whole drama going on that the Remainers clung to the hope inside the UK that they'd be able to hold on to their power and they'd be able to say to the people in the British establishment, look, of course we need to remain in this mess. If we leave, we won't be able to get the preferred positions after we graduate from our UK post into the EU and the UN. We can't let that happen. And if we leave, somebody's going to have to fess up eventually, or will want to fess up eventually, the degree to which the UK establishment was indeed meddling in the 15-16 election and likely had been meddling well before that, perhaps as far back as in the 92 election against Clinton. The UK might have been intervening, perhaps, to help HW remain in power. And then after they did that, maybe they tried to curry favor with Clinton. And who knows?
What evidence causes you to believe that happened?
That what happened?
That they were intervening with Bush.
Well, there have been multiple reports about that.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, the leader of the UK apologized to Clinton. Flew to the United States after.
To Clinton? But he won.
I'm saying to President-elect Clinton. See, what happened was, there have been published reports that H.W. looked down on Bill Clinton as a draft dodger, could not believe that he was
That's
doing
all
so.
BS.
No,
He loved Bill Clinton. They were flying cocaine into Mina Airport.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was a story that has been published in multiple different ways that he was pissed. I heard directly from a son of H.W. Bush in '96 exactly how H.W. supposedly felt about Clinton. Many times. I flew right to Europe with this guy.
Yeah, but he's a liar.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the guy, but the son. But the point is, yeah, there's that, but there's.
What's he doing? Hanging out at this is probably an all-you-can-eat raccoon barbecue, and they're hanging out drinking Mountain Dew and Diet Pepsi. This is even before he knew Chris Gowan. He had to get his own diet soda.
The Diet Pepsi is like rancid too. But who's drinking the beer?
HW? I don't know.
Anyway, all I could say is
He probably only drinks the blood of children.
I had firsthand, nearly contemporaneous, explanations of how much HW did not like Clinton back in '96. So
I don't believe it.
Things could have changed. Or was it '96? It was, yeah, '96. Anyway, so getting back on track here, the significance of Brexit and the significance of this revelation could well be that Boris Johnson will now have a clear path to restructure MI6, restructure GCHQ, and as part of a negotiation to get a trade deal across the line, which he really needs to do, we will finally learn exactly what Brennan was doing with his counterpart to run interference for Hillary in the 2015-16 timeframe, and what additionally might the UK have been doing in connection with the Benghazi thing in Syria, in connection with other misadventures where the United States and the UK have been closely involved for decades. So I think it's a very significant thing that happened. To see this published in the Sunday Times of London, which is, I believe has on its board a former head.
Dearlove.
Was it Dearlove? Or
Yeah.
Was he on the board? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. And now they have cookies, so they'll do whatever with the cookies.
Track my computer, and undoubtedly, so it was pretty good timing by me going to Christopher Steele's office right before they all decided it's time to throw him under the bus.
And it's a double-decker bus, so
That's right.
super
That's going to hurt. Yeah. So China, now this, if you think about it, let's not hit the link to the original story, but this Lucian.com, if people are not familiar with it, is a good, now that Drudge has sort of lost its utility, it's good for people to look around at Rantingly, at Free Republic, Lucian.com, Zero Hedge, are all places where you can get stories if you're interested in economics and politics, geopolitics. But here's one story about how somebody in the Chinese military was pretending to be a student. And I've got to believe there are a large number of such people in our various academic institutions. I didn't put the link in, but there's another story that somebody at Harvard, on the Harvard faculty, I think the chairman of the chemistry department of the Harvard faculty is busted for selling secrets to China.
I thought samples.
I heard something about somebody facilitated the exiting of a biological sample.
I'm not straight on the story, so I don't want to talk about it too much, but it seems to be that this coronavirus was genetically modified or genetically created. There's some component of the HIV virus in there or something.
Right, that could well be, but I think this particular story I was thinking of is that there is an actual head of the Harvard chemistry department who was tagged for basically collaborating with the Chinese. And you think about that, even these wealthy institutions, perhaps especially the wealthy educational institutions, they're always on the prowl for grants. And when you have foreign governments and foreign billionaires wanting to curry favor and getting respectability, look at what, for example, he's a domestic dead billionaire maybe, Jeffrey Epstein. Look at the way he was trying to get a patina of respectability by claiming he was contributing money to these various universities. So the universities they have a huge hunger for financial support. And I think perhaps this, coming on the heels of the Hong Kong thing, the coronavirus could have the impact of opening eyes finally to the threat that is present in China. That they're not running their country properly. They're pushing us into a climate deal that would allow them and India not to comply with the strict regulations that would have hobbled our economy. That's the way they think. It looks like they could have been experimenting with biological weapons. I hope we're not doing that. And look what happens when they go rogue. So, turning more now to domestic issues, I attended a meeting, I want to say, I forget how many years ago, a number of years ago, where John Fund, who's a good political commentator, got up and said, look, this next primary season is going to be hysterical. Make sure you have enough money. If you like popcorn, get popcorn. If you like beer, get beer. And just watching the Democratic primary is going to be hilarious. And here you have this, they've set this up for themselves. You have the story that I don't have a link up here, that the head of the Democratic Party and his team attempted to hide the fact that they have negotiated for themselves or with themselves gigantic exit packages if they're forced to leave. And now you have Moore. I think I don't like Michael Moore at all, but I agree with him here that you have these rules, you were applying and you were keeping the people who are in the Democratic effort off the debate stage. And now Mike Bloomberg comes along. He's not playing by the rules. He's attempting to purchase the Democratic nomination. And you, the DNC, this isn't the Republican Party, you, the DNC, are going to let the guy on the stage, breaking your own rules.
They have rules?
I guess.
Yeah,
but
I mean, this is just naked. Last time they at least tried to hide it and lie about it. Here they're just like, forget it, put the cash down and you can come right in.
And the thing, if you think about it, this is really stupid stuff, because what you're doing here you have Michael Moore criticizing Democrats. And now you're giving Donald Trump in the general election can use some of this footage to criticize the eventual nominee. And it's going to get worse, because Michael Bloomberg has a thin skin. He's not going to react well to this. He's very arrogant in real life. And I mean, he's got a lot of accomplishments. I suppose he's earned the right to be arrogant, but it's not the best approach to be an arrogant politician trying to be a populist. That tends not to end up working so well for you. So here you have Michael Moore with a tremendous ability to get airtime, given his profile. You've got
It's tremendous profile.
His tremendous profile. You've got Michael Bloomberg, who owns his own media empire, right? So he's going to bleed out whatever he wants to bleed out. And then you got Bernie Sanders and the babbling bartender, and How I Married My Brother, Ilhan Omar, and those people out there getting tremendous airtime. And it's turning into a monumental shit show. I mean, it just really is. And nobody in the end is going to come out looking so well here. And all Trump has to do is just continue selling to his supporters, delivering on the economic and geopolitical accomplishments that he's got. He should abandon all pretense of trying to get anything done with Congress, because that's never going to work for the election, and turn his attention to retaking control of Congress, not by Republicans, but by disruptors, people at both parties who want to shake off the establishment, shrink government, promote economic growth, promote decency, and go after cronyism and corruption. I mean, those are people in both parties. And so far, it's been sad and hilarious to watch.
So you think it would be a mistake for President Trump to focus his attention on eating gay ice cream? That seems like a really strong strategy.
Not far away from where I live is, I think, the original store.
Yeah. Well, the original store was a truck, but then I think that's the only one that I know of on
Sure, there'll be more.
7th Avenue
7th and Grove.
Grove, yeah.
Yeah. So then here we have people so it just happened, but the supposed gold standard poll that was released right before Iowa, they made it to some techies have looked at this and said, well, there's a mistake in it, so we're not going to release it. Now, Jason, was there not a long process involving Robert Mueller and Rod Rosenstein and others and Weissman talking about election meddling? I mean, does it strike you that seeing the results of a poll, which likely show Sanders miles ahead and Biden, this poll that's not being released, the decision not to release the poll sure seems to me like primary meddling.
So you're saying this would show Bernie Sanders ahead of Joe Biden?
I would think well ahead.
But Trump is not part of this poll. This is Democrats.
This is Democrats. This is what they did in 2015 and 16. Between August of 2015, when they cut that deal using Perkins Coie, the same stupid-ass lawyer, Mark Elias, or whatever his name is, cuts the deal with Hillary, between the DNC and Hillary Clinton, to allow Hillary Clinton to have tremendous influence over the whole party through the primary process. They're doing this stuff again. And, you just can't fix stupid here.
I mean, they're cheating. It's basically becoming the kind of hallmark of their brand. And, I mean, again, for people to be... We need George W. to come around with his, eloquent statement of, fool me once, I won't get fooled again, or whatever he said. It's like, come on, we're going to go through the same crap again. It's
right. Well, I mean, Sanders has these gigantic rallies, and Michael Bloomberg gets 42 paid staffers to show up for a rally in Texas.
Yeah, but still, anybody even still going to, I think, a Bernie Sanders rally is just setting themselves up for another sucker punch. There's no way the outcome of that Democratic primary is going to be legitimate.
Well, that's, I guess, my point, that if Bernie does prevail, right, then or something will happen to him. If he loses, the Berniacs are not going to vote for it. They're not going to cross the line and say, I'll vote for Bloomberg, or I'll vote for Hillary, or I'll vote.
Well, we haven't heard Hillary announce. When is what I'm thinking she might do?
What?
Bernie for president, Hillary for vice president, January 23rd, Bernie heart attack.
That's right. Yeah, I would.
Sorry, not trying to laugh about Bernie having a heart attack, but something weird is going to happen. Little doubt.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But the conservative treehouse here has an excellent piece, which is too long. Next one down, which is too long to go into in great depth now. But Biden did serve his purpose, if you think about it. From a very cynical standpoint. After he announces, which is right after the news emerges of Trump's phone call, I think within a day or so, suddenly he's in the mix. So suddenly the lamestream can say, oh yeah, Trump is only trying to push Zelensky to do what he's doing because he fears Joe Biden in the general election and this and that. And so now that impeachment doesn't look like it's going to happen, and I think there's very little appetite to go and impeach him again.
Really? I think they're going
to. Amongst the voting public. When they see the votes come in and the real polls come in, and the money dry up for people who are going to promote a second impeachment before a looming election, just have the election. If you think he's such a bad character, vote him out of office.
What do you think about this notion that Donald Trump fears Joe Biden? I get the sense that Donald Trump doesn't even fear things that he should legitimately fear.
Yeah, Donald Trump doesn't feel that. He would love to have the distinguished Amtrak commuter and non-investor crony capitalist try to get into a debate with him. That would not be pretty.
It would be hilarious, though.
Yeah, it would be good podcasting, that's for sure. Then, to your point, the guy who, the quote, son of a bitch, has filed a criminal complaint against Biden.
That's cool. How can he do that?
In Ukraine, I think.
Oh. Wow. For abuse of power. That's pretty... He's got a good sense of humor, this guy Shokin. Because it's basically... I mean, is that a crime in Ukraine? Maybe.
Well, and you think about it, I mean, prior to 1992, how many people in America focused much, unless you're of Ukrainian ancestry, thought about even going to Kiev?
I mean,
No,
Charles,
this whole episode.
prior to this, how many people in the United States were even aware Ukraine was a country?
It is?
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Well, some argue, the Russians argue, that it's a crafted country. There's a long story on that. But anyway, this is sure to continue in the news. And unlike Trump, Joe Biden, even with all his crooked family members, according to Peter Schweitzer, they don't have a tremendous amount of money.
Wow.
And they have stolen enough, perhaps, or diverted enough, but they're not going to want to spend, nor is Joe, and his brothers, I guess, are all around his age. They're not going to want to spend their waning years fighting corruption charges around the world here.
But they may have to.
But they may well have to. And this is wounded beyond repair. I've gotten a little bit more into Peter Schweitzer's book, and no family member nobody who cares about Joe Biden should have let him run. This is a strange place I find myself in, where I agree with Barack Obama. It was a bad move for Joe Biden to run, a very bad move, I think.
Yeah, but I think Barack Obama didn't want him to run because he didn't want all this to come out, because it probably leads right to him. And I think Joe Biden felt like he could run and then say that anything that they're doing against Joe Biden is just because he's running for president, and that didn't work.
That didn't work very well, no. No, not at all. Yeah, but Joe Biden has had, think about it, he's the favorite son of Delaware. I mean, what do they have, like two, he's from Scranton, Pennsylvania, but he's was a senator from Delaware for, decades.
But Mike Moore says everybody there hates him.
Right. So the point is, my point is, Delaware. Delaware is a fine place. It's a small, one of our smallest states. But I mean, to think that you're going to coast to victory, because I'll bring the voters, I bring the electoral votes of Delaware, and I also get Washington D.C. And the guy he can't think on his feet. He's just loves pushing people around, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, poking them. Listen, fat.
Yeah. Guy can't even keep his teeth in his head.
And so here's a funny story afterwards that has that one there. Yeah, that has just out today, I think, in the Washington Examiner. Hillary wants to be relevant. Well, she's going to have part of her wish. She's going to be highly relevant, but not as a candidate,
right?
As a defendant.
Relevant. It's like, hey, I want to be a millionaire. Who cares?
She's going to be relevant, all right. And the disservice, frankly, that the plus 70 crowd in the Democrat Party and up is doing to the brand is really something to think about. I mean, I said this before, and I'll say it again. I mean, the people who are out there saying, vote for me, I've got the experience, are the same people who 40 years ago were saying, don't trust anyone over 30.
Right.
Now they're over 70. And they really are not thinking clearly about their own personal priorities. I mean, Hillary Clinton has as much chance of being president of the United States as I do of playing in the Super Bowl today. I mean, it's not going to happen.
There's still a chance, Charles.
So there's a chance, right?
Yeah. Speaking of disservice and Hillary Clinton, there was this story out earlier that Tulsi Gabbard is suing Hillary Clinton, and she is avoiding service of the lawsuit.
I thought the timing. I mean, this person Hillary has, and her handlers have, the touch of shit when it comes to timing. She tweets out before the vote, nobody's above the law, just as her Secret Service agents are refusing to accept service of this lawsuit. I mean, it's just, if this person wants to be president of the United States, I wouldn't put her in charge of those Silicon Valley wine caves for many reasons. You'd be concerned about the inventory.
Drink out the inventory.
Yeah, the inventory
she didn't
shrinkage.
say no one's above the civil tort. She speaks very precisely,
That's right.
Charles.
Right, because she's one of America's smartest lawyers.
Liars.
Yeah, that's what I said.
One of America's biggest liars.
Exactly. And then this, in red, I mean, the gall of these people to just put this out. They have something now called the Clinton Global Initiative Action Network. Now, there's no such thing as ever been registered lawfully. And if it had been registered, it should have explained the epic frauds that started with the Clinton Global Initiative beginning November, when they took the name for it, I think November 15th, 2004, when they got the URL. They have certainly not set this thing up properly. Here's another national disaster. And the Clintons, of course, they picked February to go down to Puerto Rico. I mean, they probably wouldn't go there in August or the peak of summer. They like to go down for a couple of days and glom on to the various natural disasters and their aftermaths, given their horrific track record with tsunami, with Haiti, with Katrina. I mean, these people have got some serious gall. And this is supposedly the 5th meeting of this non-existent organization.
Well, somebody's dusting off their fruit hat.
Well, they're dressed for success.
Ready for Puerto Rico.
Exactly.
Ready to head over to the Caribbean. I wonder if he'll tweet about that trip. It's looking lovely. He could shave, probably.
Gillette.
Exactly.
Gillette will sponsor
the best a cross-dresser can get. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
And then we have some good news to report, Jason. I know you were very busy this morning. Did you hear about this? Early spring.
Oh yeah, the groundhog.
Yeah, the excessively large rodent not caught by Chuck Schumer's family business.
I'm surprised that people don't get upset that they're, exploiting the groundhog.
Well, I mean, I can't pronounce this place in Phil.
Punxsutawney Phil.
Yeah, that's the town. I mean, that's the whole reason for the town, is to exploit the gopher.
Yeah.
Right?
What I mean is, it can't be the same groundhog always. They must have to secure a ground. Look at all these guys he's got the groundhog there.
Those hats aren't cheap.
Is the groundhog sedated? Is it like one of these Instagram photos with a tiger where you should bite one of them?
Tigers. Where do they come up?
Yeah.
Those will come up later.
Yeah.
All right. So then we'll close out here this section, and we actually have quite a bit to go through. Clarice Feldman, next one up.
Oop. Sorry.
Yeah, Clarice Feldman is a former, I think, employee in the Justice Department. She's a lawyer, very gifted writer. And if you think about it, whenever you try to engage with a Democrat, particularly in Manhattan, the opening, let's say the unsaid assumption is that Democrats are obviously smarter. Right? I mean, that's the fact that I'm a Democrat, I guess I'll talk down to you because you're not a Democrat. You're not smart enough to. And this is a semi-humorous sample that came back and showed that actually on some of these surveys that the Trump voters are actually significantly smarter, according to this tongue-in-cheek thing here, where a number of questions were asked and the Trump people did a lot better. And Don, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Lemon.
It's Lemon, obviously.
Yeah, and think of this, he probably changed his name to Lemon from whatever it used to be. It used to be incredibly stupid was his last name.
Don Moron. But it could have been Don Lime.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not
hilarious.
Yeah. Well, what else about him there?
That's basically the story that you have. When you go into a discussion, particularly with a stranger, you should assume that person may know more about the topic you're going to talk about than you do. You should be cautious about it, even if you are the world's expert on a topic. It's certainly the tactic I always take. But lastly, we're going to talk now about the dangers. Harry, I guess his name will now turn to be, instead of being Prince Harry, it'll be Harry Windsor.
Really?
Well, that's his last name.
I thought they don't have last names.
Windsor.
So he's just Harry
and
Windsor.
Meghan Markle, and here you have this article by somebody who doesn't know anything about charity law, that this whole idea of going...
This is the TMZ guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But this whole... he's actually a pretty entertaining interview. I enjoy him. He's probably annoying as hell in real life. But this idea that Harry and Meghan Markle should emulate the Obamas who emulated the Clintons. I mean, no, that's not what you should do. I mean, you should have your personal fortune. If you're going to go down this track of being a celebrity charity, you should have your fortune managed by hard-ass trustees who make it very clear that you may not profit off your charity. And these people should be the roughest, toughest, financially most astute people out there who can say to a Bill Clinton or a Hillary Clinton, Chelsea Clinton, Harry Windsor, Meghan Markle, you name it, Barack or Michelle, no, we are in control of your fucking money. We're investing it on your behalf, okay? And you are not going to get a book deal from off-market book deal, and you are not getting a Netflix deal off your charity. You're just not doing that. Because we are trying to protect your money from the IRS, who's going to come and take your trust fund away from you if you go down this track.
Well, but they're not in the United States. How's the IRS going to do anything?
No, the UK, our laws are modeled on the UK laws.
Huh.
The same laws.
Somebody had an article posted that Meghan Markle's first, endeavor is going to be a reality show about second marriages, and I was like, what? That's is that predicting something? This whole situation, it reminds me a little bit of Superman 2, Charles. I don't know if you recall, but Superman wanted to marry Lois Lane, and to do that, he had to give up the Supermanhood, and it just went to pot right
the
after
whole
that.
Samson and Delilah thing, it doesn't work out that well when you do that kind of stuff. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched the British sitcom To the Man Are Born.
No.
But it's very funny. And
To the what?
To the Man Are Born. And the lady of the house is this very pretentious woman whose last name is Bucket, but she answers the phone. How does she say it? This is the lady of the house speaking. You've reached the Bouquet residence.
Right.
Anyway, that's what there is. So let's just set this up a little bit on John Hope Bryant. So what we've done here is lift a little excerpt from Bill Clinton's infamous book, Giving, which described in 2007 the supposed status of Operation Hope. By 2007, and this book came out in September of 7, so who knows when Bill's information is from. It said they raised $100 million in grants, $300 million by that time.
Just for Operation Hope.
Through Operation Hope, through these gatherings. That they had engaged partnerships with 300 private companies. Okay? Now that's a lot of partnership. That's a lot of legal work. And that should have been, in each case, if there was a partnership, a legal partnership, which is a formal process, if there were legal papers involving the private company and Operation Hope, what did those private companies make from their participation in Operation Hope? What did John Hope Bryant and his family make out of any of those partnerships? Where are the disclosures on this? You had partnerships with more than 100 government agencies. That's a lot of government agencies. We have 50 states, so let's say you have a number in each state, and you have federal, and partnerships with more than 1,000 other non-governmental organizations. That is one hell of a lot of work to do all that.
Not only that, Charles, if he's talking about this relationship in 2007, I was misled just because we only recently started talking about John Hope Bryant. I thought it was a relatively new relationship, but this is going way back here.
Goes to 2002, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, with Bill and this guy. It describes here, John Bryant is a 41-year-old whirlwind of ideas and action. Those are exactly the type of people I get most nervous about. Somebody who walks into a room, has got talking a mile a minute, has got to rush over to the next meeting, and you can never pin that person down. That's not somebody you give money to, whether in a charity or an investment. And the first thing you do with somebody like that is to say, all right, you're a 41-year-old whiz kid, okay? Please show us a resume that we can check. Okay, please explain to us how you built this thing up here, who these partners are, where's all this legal paperwork, who does the tough, what's the accountant have to say about this, where are all the forms, and then when you start going down that path, the deal falls apart.
Would you like to buy some Reese's Pieces?
Exactly, I'll give you some Reese's Pieces, right? But then you have this excerpt from Bill's book. I was 26 and financially successful, but I wasn't happy in 1992. I wanted to change hearts and minds. I started Operation Hope out of guilt, pain, and a need to heal myself. Guilt over what? I
And healing from what?
It doesn't make much sense to us. And then you look down the page of this book here, the slide here, on Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton supposedly made, I thought the number was, I may have it wrong, $6.4 million for writing this book, which some people who've reviewed it regarded as turgid at best. I mean, it's just it's like an infomercial. Like, all right, now let's extol this person and that person, another person. It's
but
almost
also, isn't that a huge sum to be paid, like $6 million?
We'll show you in a second. $6.4 million, and then on the 9th of May, 2008, when Hillary's fighting to stay in the hunt, to stay relevant, well, how much money did Hillary Clinton lend her campaign on the 9th of May, 2008, Jason?
Looks like the same amount he got for the book.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I might want to ask a few questions about. It's like, hey, Bill, you got this money for doing nothing. Put it in the campaign. Wow. They probably got it back anyway. And then here, look at you to your point about the 10 richest book deals. So if you hit that link in The Guardian, and this is against my own interest potentially, because I would love to do a series of books. I think it is fair. There's definitely a market for that you can point to of how many books sell, and what does the author get? What percentage of the sales revenue does an author get for his or her work? Now, James Patterson, I know the CEO of his operation, so I've had a briefing years ago on how they did this. And these James Patterson and the CEO of his operation are two former ad executives at a big firm, which you can look up, who were sitting in their offices one day saying, this is kind of dull. Is there anything else we could do and have more fun?
Maybe write fake books about Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton.
Mystery books. So they came up with this idea of like, how many of these can we pump out? Patterson does take a big interest in each book, personal interest in the content, but he gets co-authors. And they have a pipeline of these Patterson books that just go out, hardback, paperback, I don't know how many a year. And he makes a lot of money per year. Okay, but these books sell. And Ken Follett, I didn't realize he made $50 billion. That seems a lot for another mystery book. The Pope, why the Pope should get an advance of $8.5 million, devoting himself to poverty.
Right.
The Pope. And then you get My Lies. My Life. Or what was it? My Lies or My Life?
My Life of Lies.
But $15 million supposedly for that book back in 2004. Hillary gets $14 million in 2014. Springsteen, I can see selling a lot of books because he sells a lot of music.
Right.
Right?
And also that's a guy who's not really an author, if you want to entice him. And how many books has he written? At that point, I think it's a book about his whole entire life.
Right. And then you get Margaret Thatcher. She was a historic figure, even though Hillary didn't put her in her book. The girl with the lower back tattoo, I find it hard to understand why that person should get $9 million for that.
Amy Schumer is a
comedian
and somehow related to Chuck Schumer.
Is that right?
I believe.
Definitely the funny one then.
Well,
Chuck, not so funny.
I don't know. She makes Amy Schumer, I'm not sure if I like or not.
J.K. Rowling has made a lot more over time. I think she's made $1 billion. Of course, a former Rolling Stone is going to make money. So when you see these are the top 10 book deals as of 2017, how did Michelle and Barack get $60 million? That to me is, you should not allow that. If we're going to regulate, we're going to create these gigantic global enterprises and have oligarchs like Bloomberg now thinking he can buy an election. For Mike Bloomberg to pay somebody $100 million evidently doesn't mean much. If he's going to spend a couple $100 million so far on his campaign, and Tom Steyer the same thing, there has to be closer scrutiny of this, and I hope there will be. So if we go, Jason, back into the slides.
Perhaps it was a lifetime supply of gay ice cream for $65 million.
All right, so there are going to be people, perhaps accountants and lawyers, who are going to say, okay, this guy's he's not giving up on John Hope Bryant. This is the 205th 2-hour podcast.
I'm talking about you now.
Right. Right.
I thought you meant Bill Clinton's not giving up on John Hope Bryant.
No. So here we have, and I don't want to pull the links up because it will take too much time, but here we have just 12 examples out of 205 2-hour videos that we've done.
We should change the format to 10 hours, Joe.
That's right. Well,
or
maybe
telethon.
Or that's right. To put you to sleep. Get them. What would be a good language to translate them into?
Ukrainian,
all right. And run them at 78 RPM. Anyway, we'll talk about them briefly. Eric Hansen, A Man for All Seasons. Eric Hansen and the firm BKD, which I think is in a precarious state right now because Eric Hansen, as chief operating officer of BKD, rather than do something about the burgeoning Clinton Foundation frauds, where BKD got involved with those in March 2002 at the latest, they just chose to basically hope that the problem would go away and put out
John Hope Bryant, that the problem would go away?
Well, no, Eric. Yeah, John Hope Bryant came in.
He hoped that the problem would go away.
He John Hope Bryant.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Eric Hansen I think, is a person who is involved with the AICPA on board level, which is a very important self-regulatory body for the accounting profession in the U.S., and he's involved at chief operating officer level of BKD. We put him on notice in 2018. And look, you got to step up to the plate here, bud, and you need to police yourself. And he's decided not to do that. We got a lot of attention the 7th of October and the fact that the Obamas are copying the Clintons. We went back to Hansen on the 28th of October, then back again in the 19th. Then we talked about how the poor people of Africa are used most often in the covers of annual reports and proposal schemes to con money out of multilateral organizations and other operations. That appears to be exactly what John Hope Bryant is doing with his thing, which is only supposed to operate in serving the disadvantaged people of Los Angeles. We dwelt on the fact that you had Mueller, Comey, and Rosenstein, who were the three banditos who should have been able to police the Clinton Foundation fraud and didn't.
Yeah.
Take you through that in some depth. We went down the path of explaining why the UK may have been meddling, what they feared, this role of this fellow Dearlove. Then we got into, we then turned our attention to John Hope Bryant on the 15th of September 2019. Now, John, we're not picking on you. Okay? You're a relatively small fraudster in the Clinton community of fraudsters. We've gone after quite a large number in this 205 podcasts of the various people, be they Ira Magaziner or Rhodes Scholar, companion to Bill Clinton, or many other people, Bill Gates. We're not just picking on you, John Hope Bryant, because you're disadvantaged or because you're black or whatever. That's not why we're picking on you. We're picking on you because you are an inveterate, unapologetic fraudster and con artist. And you need to come and defend yourself. You need to fill out filings that are accurate and amend those that are not accurate. And you need to stop fundraising. You need to start telling the truth to the accountants, trustees, and lawyers you've been lying to, and to your donors you've been lying to. Because if you won't do it, we will. We then got back into Bill Clinton's world. Now, Bill has been in charity fraud for a long time. I would argue that he cut his chops in the political charity fraud, political campaigns where you're lying your ass off about how much money you've actually raised, how you spent it, what you did with the money that your state, Arkansas, was doing, and then the U.S. You've been in this for a long time. There are lots of con artists here in New York where you like to come, Mr. Bryant. And then we got back up into your grill on the 30th of October, 2019. Robin DeHood was, let's hit that.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I like that.
Robin DeHood.
That poster, yeah.
Let me just make sure we have it set to the opening frame there. He's a very smiley guy, I have to say.
Yeah, that was another great poster, I thought.
I got to revisit the book idea. Definitely people want the book. So we'll see if perhaps that would be a special gift for sponsors on Subscribestar and Patreon.
Maybe a limited edition book.
Yeah, something like that.
Signed limited edition.
That's a great idea, actually.
And then you have this whole idea of how fake charities can be used as laundromats. And I forget what that, let's look at that poster. That probably was pretty good too.
Fake charity laundromat. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
This was a movie that I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah.
I forget what the movie was.
Anyway. So there's a lot here. These are just some of the things you might watch. And for accounting firms and legal firms that are looking at this mess and trying to figure out, do we defend John Hope Bryant personally? Do we defend Operation Hope personally? Do we defend our own work product? If we did pro bono work, can we say, well, we're not responsible for it? What about the accountants who are involved in the same thing? I think, we have to, whether this guy is, his ethnicity just doesn't matter. His record does, and it's a record of being an unrepentant con artist and perhaps thug. So if we go to the next page. Now, I did bring, and it's not near me so I can't show you, but I have his book, The Memo. Somebody gave it to me. It's in my bag over there. But we can, if it's easy, we can. Yes, Jason's going to show it to you. You can see my bag of tricks in a second here. Thank you. You don't have to take up a collection for a new one because I like bags that nobody will steal. Thanks, Jason.
We should leave it in
But this
John Solomon's car if
Right.
you don't want anybody to steal it.
This is the book that he or somebody wrote, 5 Rules for Your Economic Liberation. And it's a thin book.
Oh, wow,
Very
it really
thin.
is.
It's a very thin book.
For hardcovers, especially.
But you look at this, the man, and he probably takes a page out of Clinton's book, he's very good at slogans. The mission of Operation Hope is silver rights empowerment.
Silver? Right.
Not civil rights, silver rights.
What is that?
Money. If we can go back to the slide, it's you look at this and say, dude, I mean, you're trying to sell something. I don't know what it is, but you're supposed to be running a public charity that stands in the shoes of government. So a charity doesn't help make free enterprise work for everyone. Free enterprise can work without charity. That's the whole idea of it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you look at this and it says it's the nonprofit private banker. Boy, oh boy, I mean, I ran this to spell check and they didn't pop any of this up. For the working poor. The nonprofit private banker. Now, private bankers.
Yeah, what is that?
Both nonprofits and private bankers are regulated, right? A nonprofit's not supposed to.
What is a private banker?
A private
If you're
banker
rich and
is.
you go in there.
It's a private banker. In the old days, was somebody who catered to the uber wealthy,
Yeah.
who would walk your dog, take your child to school, give you investment advice, kind of like a butler.
That's weird.
A financial butler. But I mean, this whole idea that you're positioning your Operation Hope as your nonprofit private banker for the working poor. Okay, now working poor people don't need private bankers.
Right.
Working poor people need
More
higher
money.
income
Right.
and less spending. It's nice to try to help underserved people, but let's think about that. In the financial world, bankers generally don't lend money to people who have no money and a propensity to spend more money than they earn. That's called a bad credit risk.
Yeah, I was gonna say, unless you're Hank Paulson, you're not into
Right,
that.
exactly. Right. So if you're going to target this thing to the poorest of the poor in disadvantaged communities, what you're trying to do is I think, and it's questionable whether you should do this as a charity, you're trying to find products and services that can be offered by people living in these communities who would come to a job on time, ready for work, and work together and enjoy the process of selling ever more products or distributing ever more services, not simply in this disadvantaged area, but across Los Angeles and California and the United States and around the world. That's a for-profit enterprise. When you start saying that what you want to do is serve in a charity the struggling middle class, that does not sound like charity to me at all. I mean, the middle class in America are among, as a group, the richest people on earth. I mean, that's not where I'd want to see my charitable money go. I'd want to find truly disadvantaged
Poor people. Yeah.
really disadvantaged people, maybe people with disabilities, medical disabilities, that you can help one way or another. But you go down this and you say, we achieve our mission by being the best-in-class provider of financial literacy empowerment for youth. Let's stop right there. Best in class.
There's nobody else in that class.
Best in class does not mean jackass. Somebody who is, who treats the report.
Best jackass in class.
Who treats the reporting requirements imposed by the city of Los Angeles, the state of California, the federal government, and states across the United States where you're running this sham, force you to make reports that are true and correct and do not omit material facts or misstate material facts. His reports are rubbish. You can't call yourself best in class when you haven't filled out your most recent reports that I'll show you in a second. So what makes you believe that you can be the best in class provider? What on your resume helps us understand why you have the pretension to say that you're going to be a best-in-class provider of financial literacy empowerment, financial capability for communities, and what the hell does financial dignity for all mean?
Well,
this is not a charitable concept. This is a business development opera, a feel-good cult.
The first thing that strikes me, Charles, when you're talking about something called Operation Hope Los Angeles, if anybody has walked around downtown Los Angeles, there's a homeless problem in New York, of course, but
It's
like
bad,
Los
right?
Angeles, there's entire blocks that are like
Right.
controlled by the homeless. They have tents and like umbrellas where like you can't go down there. So it would seem to me that a thing that's trying to give hope to the financially underprivileged in Los Angeles should focus its attention on that, the homeless problem in Los Angeles.
You think so? Because it's called Los Angeles Operation Hope.
Not helping people who already have jobs invest money. How about helping the broke, sick?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that wouldn't involve getting on a plane and flying around the world, going to fancy resorts and giving fancy speeches. So remember we said in 2007 they had raised $100 million in grants. Now this says by 2000, this is the most, whenever this book was printed out, they've served 2.5 million people, directed $2.8 billion to America's low-wealth community. They're maintaining an army of 22,000 volunteers, working in 300 cities, and for some strange reason, in Morocco, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and the United Arab Emirates. Note to Mr. Bryant.
Not in LA.
Well, beyond that, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. I haven't checked recently.
Rich.
Well, very rich in the case of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. I haven't checked it recently, and I don't speak Arabic. But from memory, the laws in the countries of Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab are really strict, particularly when it comes to lying under oath in presentations to raise money. And I'm not sure that the death penalty in Saudi Arabia for doing that is death. It probably involves cutting something off. Because stealing is one hand for a relatively small amount. Typically, your crucial, what do they do? They cut off your right hand.
Wow.
And that's the hand that you're supposed to eat with. The other hand being...
Wow.
So that's rough over there. And
That's
you don't want to be
crazy.
flying around the world claiming that you got everything, your ducks in a row, when you don't. So buried in your website, and we have the link here for you, for the viewers.
This one?
Yeah, this is your book. Who knows how much money somebody paid you to write that book and distribute it. I hope that charity did not buy copies of that book and compensate them. But if you can go back into the... Sorry, Jason.
Oh, I thought you wanted to see the book.
No. If you go back in here, you see, look, this is a press release that came out on October 8th, 2019. Okay? And buried in this, it says we're going to issue an audit, and we're going to review and resubmit our 2017 audit. And it says here, we're going to address some technical errors. Technical errors. Now, when you say and characterize something as a technical error, it should not be a fundamental flaw in the way in which you report. A technical error is, I got the pagination wrong, I have typos.
The spacing is not quite right.
A technical error is not, my organization was chartered to help people in Los Angeles, and I thought about that after a while, and I said, F that, Bill Clinton is in New York, he's got this gig, I'm watching what he's doing around the world, I'm coming to New York, hooking up with Bill, and we're going to fly around the world doing these projects all over the world, only we're not going to change any of our paperwork, we're not going to register properly in any state or foreign jurisdiction. Those are not technical errors, particularly when they go all the way back to 92. And a technical error is not having financial statements that don't make any sense, right? That are completely wrong. That isn't a technical error. That is a disqualifying defect. That is an error that says you are not best in class. Okay, you are a fool. And so then we turn to John Hope Bryant's biography, which you and I have talked about this before. But we need to bring it up again. This one right here, Jason.
Don't want to bring it up again?
Do, if you can.
Oh, yeah. That's the one we had.
Yeah, now this is, if you scroll down this lengthy biography, the very bottom, we can go down the page. It goes on and on and on.
He's doing a lot of photo shoots, Charles.
Yeah, modesty, not much of a quality.
Tom Brokaw.
Yeah.
Another dope.
Yeah. All right, so for some reason, he has stopped issuing these annual chronological Bryant career highlights. Let's hit the 2017 one. There isn't a 2018 one. There was a whole biography, like a 19-pager. Maybe it's at the very end. Maybe that's gone.
Where?
Very bottom. I thought he had a purchase book. Yeah, so there's some other books he's written. How the Poor Can Save Capitalism. That should be a very short book. But it's not.
We could look at a previous version of the website. Has something been removed?
I thought, well, there is on his resume something that we talked about in the past. We'll just let the viewers go back and look at the previous episodes.
Charles, this is pretty interesting. Here, normally when I look at this Internet Archive, it's got snapshots, at least one per month for every year going back to however long this thing has been around. Look at this. Only 2 months of snapshots during 2019 and 2018. Look at that. September, nothing for all these other times. I wonder if those have been eliminated.
They could well have been cleaned up because he had I think, a 19-page bio that bragged, among other things, about his being the only African American ever to be knighted in Germany, which is rubbish. There is no such official thing. Americans can't be knighted to begin with, but beyond that, I don't think there's any formal German state process to knight anybody, let alone an African American from Los Angeles.
Well, this is nothing about him being knighted, but this is from September 2019. Let's see what he's got going on in 2018. This is interesting. This is the second time we were looking at something on David Hawkins' Discovery CSI, and it was coincidentally very blank in the Internet Archive. So that's weird.
That tends to be what happens when you scrub things out that you don't want people to see.
Yeah, it looks like something like that might be going on. We can resume that investigation later, perhaps.
That's a good idea. So one thing to bear in mind as we now go to the final presentation here, where we're going to rip through the final pages as we tend to do, you are not allowed, Bryant's personal and supposed charitable interests are heavily intertwined, as you can see from looking through his bio. You need to understand that a charity, and this is a general type of charity, but especially a public charity, has to be organized and operated exclusively for charitable purposes. And no part of the net income can fall into the lap of a private shareholder or individual. A charity is not an exercise in having annual meetings to glorify Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or anybody else or John Hope Bryant, and then discuss what you might eventually do with charity. So you have all these people in the room and then you sell them products. That is not a charity. That's a cult. So if we go to the next page.
Could be a sales meeting.
Now, and the other thing to remember, and this is a suggestion, and I know lawyers and accountants don't need help from me, but the IRS, and here's the link, defines self-dealing very precisely, and don't hit up all these links because you can go this at your leisure. People who claim to be accountants will understand what self-dealing transactions are. And with regard to every single Bryant enterprise, every single person contributing to the Operation Hope, there needs to be an investigation of what did the contributor, what did the operator get out of the charity? What did the contributor, what did the operator give to the charity? And what sort of disclosures exist in the various filings that are on this charity going back to 1992? Now, I don't have it to hand, but my memory is that Bryant organized the thing in 92, but got his determination letter, I want to say he got it in 97. I may have that wrong, and it may have been his second letter that he got. That may have been his letter confirming that he'd passed as a public charity. But all of these types of transactions, paying compensation, Bryant's compensation to me seems excessively high, or reimbursing expenses, also excessively high travel expenses for a charity that's not, I mean, it's supposed to be, cars are expensive, I suppose, in Los Angeles, parking. But if you're supposed to be doing work in Los Angeles, you shouldn't be spending almost $1 million a year on travel, because it's not that expensive to travel in Los Angeles. Wow. And when you're going to amend the documents, the crucial articles of incorporation and bylaws of a charity, you better make sure you do a thorough job. Don't necessarily get a law firm involved that will do pro bono free work for you. Pay some money to get somebody who will take the job seriously. And remember that you have the issue of not the obvious way in which you can do self-dealing, where John Hope Bryant takes a trip first class to Europe with his girlfriend or wife and charges that to the charity. That's obvious. That's direct self-dealing. Indirect self-dealing would be where the charity contracts with a company in which John Hope Bryant or people close to John Hope Bryant have an economic interest. Or alternatively, when a service provider gloms on to this thing and says, I want to be the exclusive provider of accounting services or law services so that I can promote myself, my good name,
bid contract
at these gatherings,
right.
And have all these prospective customers, who are there to brag about how John Hope Bryant's wonderful, and they're trying to concoct schemes. And when you get to a scheme like that in a second, all those ties need to be investigated. And then if you happen to be a law firm, and law firms tend to be regulated by the DC bar, hopefully not the one.
So nothing could go wrong with that.
Right. Hopefully not the same one that Mueller attends. But, we put up some rules here, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not trying to be an accountant or a lawyer, just somebody who cares about charity. The definition of professional misconduct in Washington, D.C., all right, commit a criminal act, getting involved, filing as a lawyer a 990, which is the annual report of a charity, or other regulatory documents that is knowingly false, right? When you're a trustee of a charity, you've been a trustee for a long time, and you should have known that this thing was just supposed to operate in Los Angeles, and you should be smart enough to read your own articles of incorporation that have not been amended to expand the geographic and otherwise scope of this charity. When you start palming those documents off, sending them across state lines using the mail, when you'll start letting people around this charity borrow money in applications which are sworn under penalties of perjury, or filing tax returns sworn under penalty, you start getting drawn into a criminal conspiracy. And, forget being a lawyer. If you're just an ordinary human being, you are skating dangerously close to career-ending activities. Because the last thing lawyers want to do is say, yeah, I'm a lawyer. I started life as a criminal, and I've reformed, and hire me because I'm a criminal, and I know what happens when you break the law. And it's not simply criminal activity. Engage in conduct involving dishonesty. I mean, this is the definition of dishonesty, is this charity. Fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation. This is a charity that issued a public announcement saying they're going to correct their filings, has carried on soliciting money ever since, has not corrected the filings. I've checked on New York and California. They have not, those are two big markets for fundraising. I highly question whether any filing this charity has made in any foreign jurisdiction is correct. And it sure seems to me like if you're a law firm, you're directly involved, your people are being involved in something, conduct involving dishonesty. To help you out, that's when you're not honest.
I mean, this is a hilarious list, Charles, for the DC bar to give us professional conduct rules that say don't do anything criminal. That's like when you're on the train and there's a sign that says do not get off the moving train. I'm thinking if you need that sign, you might as well get off. That's evolution.
Yeah. Or engage in conduct that seriously interferes with the administration of justice. That would mean, that you would intervene to try to protect John Hope Bryant because you've been at this so long. You should turn the guy in. They're like, I'm not going to work for you anymore. I can't. Your record's horrific. Okay? So I say here numerous licensed professionals. By that I mean accountants, lawyers, and we're about to get to a new category of people who are in trouble.
Tigers.
Pharmacists. People who are supposed to license themselves. People who have professional licenses need not to lie about their records. So let's go to the next page. We're going to now meet John Hope Bryant's third father-in-law. Okay, he's a gentleman named David Dalton. I believe it's David Lee Dalton.
No relation to David Lee Roth.
I doubt it. And here, this company, Univec, we'll get to them in a second.
Univac?
Univec, not VAC, VEC, entered into a partnership October 2nd, 2017. This is to get with a company called Agrimed to get involved in growing medical weed.
Yeah.
Okay. And this fellow with this name, he's probably from the long line of Davy Crockett, Sterling Crockett. I mean, you couldn't make a name like this up. You got John Hope Bryant and you got Sterling Crockett. Wow, what a man like Sterling Crockett must have an impeccable reputation, right? And he's so happy to welcome Dr. David Dalton. And
what is he a doctor of?
Well, that's a good question, Jason. We're going to get to that in a second. So if we hit this here, this is John Hope Bryant. There's several links in here. You got it.
Yeah, it's just opening over here.
This is John Hope Bryant promoting this is his father-in-law, Dr. David Dalton, who was named one of the top 100 healthcare leaders for 2019.
By who?
I don't know. The International Forum on Advancements in Healthcare.
Never heard of that.
Exactly. And so
IFA.
I will remind people that I used to live in a building, which was an interesting building in the village that had Run DMC. Jam Master Jay was a couple of doors away. LL Cool J was there.
I don't think people realize how hip you are, Charles.
I wasn't hip at all. It was like, these guys are having the time of their lives. I was a boring banker. But also in the building was a gentleman who went to jail, or I think near the building or in the building. And he was a guy who drove around in a purple Rolls Royce that had these vanity plates that either said 1-800-TUSH or TUSH, TUSH. And he was all over, the billboards everywhere. He was a plastic surgeon and he advertised that was, I don't know if that was his, but so he had the purple roller. I had a light blue one, but it didn't. So, my first. Anyway, whatever. And so it turned out that 1-800-TUSH never went to medical school, and he ended up. Obviously, when you perform more than 4,000 or thousands of plastic surgeries with no medical training and get away with it, that's very serious stuff. And so,
how on earth could he even do that? Why would you want to do? Who's like, I think I'll dabble in surgery.
I know, but it's crazy. People do this. And so, in the case going back into the little announcement here on this Dr. Dalton, I am very skeptical of people who call themselves medical doctors. And when I look I haven't done an exhaustive check on this person, but I have found conflicting evidence in the file. Some that say that he received a bachelor in pharmacist from West Virginia, the university. I'm going to call him this week and check and see what happens. What happened. And then In other places, it says he received a doctorate in Maryland, but it doesn't identify the institution that may have given him a doctorate. Now, the difference between having a bachelor as a pharmacist and having a doctorate in pharmaceutical, whatever, pharmacist studies, is a very, see here it says he graduated from this place in 71. Then it says 2 years later, he earned his doctorate in pharmacy in Maryland. Well, okay, I want to see it. I want to see a copy of it. Because I don't see evidence of it in the licensing files that I've looked through so far. Maybe he has. Okay, maybe he's totally justified in saying that he does in fact have a doctorate. And there's a very big difference in having a doctorate and just a bachelor's degree. Very large difference. And so anyway, go back into the slide there. You'll see here on this status thing, there's another tweet here. This. Yeah.
Oh, from John Hope Bryan himself. Yeah. I believe I follow him on Twitter. How does he get the blue check, Charles?
I don't know.
Not able to get that.
Yeah, you're not cool.
I know.
Nor am I. All right. So
here's his Twitter.
Right, and he's promoting. I don't know if you.
TD Bank.
Yeah. This company, Univec Conglomerate, he says on December 9th, 2019, is the second most viewed stock today on some site, 17,000 views, all right? So the question logically becomes, is Univec a company? Is it a real thing? Or is it a fig Newton of his imagination, a figment of his imagination?
The reason I had that reaction when you first mentioned it is because it sounds like this character from the Jetsons. This is the Uniblab, the robot that replaces George Jetson at his job.
That's good. I like it.
So I thought perhaps that's where they got the idea.
They may as well have, as you'll see in a second. So if we go back into the slide.
The robot ultimately gets fired for insulting Mr. Spacely.
So it says here that Dalton is the CEO of Univec. And then we look at Univec. If you take, this is the SEC site, and it may be that it's registered under a different name, but this is what you get when you punch in to the SEC. This is called their Edgar system. And notice the dates. The most recent filing for Univec is the 22nd of November 2010. And the last I checked, this is 2019, 2020 that they're talking about. If you go to the left, Jason, you see there are various categories of filings. Here's one. This is a quarterly report. Forget that one. Quarterly report here, if you hit documents, and for any public company, and then you hit this here, the top one, you'll get, this is their 10Q. All right, and you go down the page here, and for those of us who like...
What's 10Q?
It's a quarterly report. Now let's look at this for a second. So hold this for a second. I don't know, can you make the screen the type bigger or no?
Maybe.
Yeah, good. And now we see on the right here, look at the size of this. In 2010, for 3 months...
Is this dollars or
that's dollars? No, that's dollars.
So the thing has $972?
900. That's 900.
And then it's losing 14,000?
Yeah.
What is it spending?
It's actually losing 22,000.
How does it end up with 181?
Those are number of shares, okay? So this is a sub-penny stock thing. Keep going down the page, though. Now we get to the balance sheet. What is this? No. So, that's the cash flow statement. Keep going down further. No, actually, we've got to go. We missed the balance sheet. It's the first one. Okay. Here's the balance sheet. You keep going up the page a little bit. All right. At September 30th, 2010, this fantastic company had how much in the way of total assets, Jason? You can see it over on the right. It's going to be numbers you like.
I mean, is it 3,000?
93. 3,919. 93 backwards. Anyway, that's the total amount of assets. Okay? So if you've got a company that's public and your total asset base is 3,000...
$4,000, it's like, what are you doing?
Not even $4,000 yet.
Yeah.
And then you go down and you say, what are our total liabilities?
This makes me feel much better about Crowdsource the Truth.
All right, so what are your total liabilities? Total liabilities are $3,181,941.
What's that about?
That's not good.
Well, what
You
causes
have
that?
failed to pay payroll of one. You owe your employees $1.9 million.
But why would they hire that many people if they only have $3,900?
It speaks to like the capabilities of the doctor here, Dr. Dalton. So $3,181,000 in liabilities. Then we go down the page. Their accumulated shareholders deficit is $5,900,827. That's a lot of money to lose. They had convinced suckers to buy stock for $11.6 million, but they lost through operations $17.7 million.
Wow.
Now, this balance sheet, I'll just say, as somebody who knows a little bit about this, is impossible. You can't have assets of $3,919 and what they call here, could also be called capitalization, 3,919, if the sum of liabilities and accumulated deficit doesn't equal 3,919, which it doesn't. If you take 3,181 and you subtract 5.9 million, you do not come up to a positive 3,919. So this is mathematically incorrect. And most doctors I know are scientists. To get through science, you've got to be arithmetic is kind of essential. It's a kind of an essential thing. So here you have a company, Univac, that he's bragging about today being CEO of. John Hope Bryant is promoting this sucker. Now maybe it's been restructured since then, and I'm missing something.
They bought a calculator.
But the most recent thing that's on file is not good. And then you go back into it, and we hit here this line, this HTTP line. That's his LinkedIn.
Nice.
All right, there you have another nice picture of him.
Top 100 healthcare leaders
Award.
Yeah, that seems like a slightly above the Airline Magazine Best Doctor Award.
Yeah, so exactly get that from. Now maybe we look here, he says he's the CEO of Univac. And here you notice it says here, before it said Bachelor of Pharmacy in 1971. On this one it says Doctor of Pharmacy in 1971. So which was it? Was it Bachelor or Doctor? And as my understanding is it's a 6-year process to get a doctorate. So, maybe this is true, maybe it isn't true. We're going to find out, I hope, next week. We go back into the slides. We leave Mr. Dalton, and we go to the next page. He joins this Agromed board of directors days after the first announcement. And again, here it says he received a Doctor of Pharmacy from the West Virginia University School of Pharmacy, which there will be evidence of that, yes or no. And it talks about Agromed Industries, LLC. Doesn't that sound fantastic? Very sexy, etc. Is there a problem with Agromed Industries of any type? Would you suspect, Jason, by the way I'm asking this question?
Probably yes. It wouldn't be in this presentation if it didn't have some kind of a...
Is it going to be a small problem?
I'm going to think no.
All right, so we go to the next page.
Next page.
Yeah. Days later, the CEO of Agromed, this is in a news report here, medical marijuana CEO failed to disclose criminal history from the 1990s. Okay, so here you have Dr. David Dalton going on the board. It's kind of like Hillary Clinton becoming a senator in January of 2001 and going under criminal investigation by February of 2001 for her role with the Clinton Foundation frauds. But here's a guy, the CEO with a great name, Sterling Crockett, out of 177 companies selected to be, trying to get this grower's license in Pennsylvania to provide medical. This company comes in first, but Sterling, Mr. Crockett, failed to disclose a criminal history involving being CEO of a company that was involved in corruption in New York in the early 1990s. I mean, that's not at all material that you pled guilty to corruption when you're trying to get a license to grow marijuana, which you say you're going to keep track of, and it's a risky thing to start letting people grow marijuana and say they're using it for medical purposes, but what if they're not? What if they're growing a lot more weed than they say they're selling? Yeah. And, so you brought on board your crack outside director, David Dalton. And the best-in-class jackass of financial literacy, John O'Brien, is promoting the fact, hey, my father-in-law just went on the board of this great company, Univac. And so what happens to the stock of Univac? It goes,
Really?
and then people get out of it. And let's see, is Univac...
Why the stock goes up? Because John Hope Bryant says
in part
it's good?
because people were amping it up and saying, look at this great thing, medical marijuana. I mean, people will buy... particularly in the Trump era euphoria, where the stock market generally is rocketed up, and you have all these talking heads at conferences saying, cannabis, it's the next big thing. And you've got this leading entrepreneur, and you've got Best in Jackass, and you've got all these people promoting it at forums. The stock, it's a penny stock. I can get in big. I'll put $1,000 in. I'll buy 1 million shares of it, or whatever the math is. Next thing you know, it'll go to $1. It'll be like, the Honeymooners or Seinfeld or whatever. So it's that kind of environment. Now, when you start doing this kind of stuff, you stop being, a harmless guy promoting charitable causes in Los Angeles. You should become in the center of the type of investigations where FBI people raid your offices, the SEC gets involved, the Department of Justice gets involved, state security people get involved. This is serious stuff. Now we go, let's see, has Agromed survived? Are they in good shape? Let's look at the next page. The Pennsylvania regulators revoked the permit of Agromed to operate in Pennsylvania, okay? They get a cease and desist letter, and it says here they had a surprise inspection. It may have been resolved, but I don't see evidence of it being resolved in Agromed's favor. And this is something that John Hope Bryant's father-in-law has been on the board of this thing, Agromed. Okay? Now, one thing to understand about Pennsylvania is, and brings it back to the Clintons, in the early period, the Clinton Foundation relied heavily upon a prominent fundraising operation to do fundraising, I believe, certainly for the Clinton Foundation, maybe for campaigns allied to Clinton allies. And let's see what happened here, Jason. We've shown this up in the past.
Oh, yes. A prominent fundraiser.
Right. So this is a firm that was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by the Clinton Foundation over time, and this is a consent agreement and order. They have to pay a fine. This is O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson. The name has been renamed. This is an action that took place in 2002. Go to the very end of it. It'll show you the date. I forget if it was after the election of 2002. So yeah, it was after the election of 2002. So the midterm people didn't know in this time frame that the Clinton Foundation's principal fundraiser, external fundraiser, who had the agreements involving this O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson, mention of it are in the 990s for the Clinton Foundation in this time frame, but they have never told the various states in which they raised money that they used a fundraiser that had been disciplined for illegal fundraising in Pennsylvania for the Clinton Foundation. And this is just when John Hope Bryant starts getting involved with tying Operation Hope to the Clinton Foundation in 2002. So query, Mr. Bryant, did you know about this? If you didn't, then I don't think you're best in class. If you did, you're worse in class. Right? So then we go back into it,
John Hope Bryant. And
we see at the very bottom, just before the election of 2016, this story came out. And I spent some time trying to help this person, Mark Greenblatt, but he really did all this work himself and with his assistant, Maren Macklis, I guess. But this goes on and on and on, how the Clinton Foundation was disciplined, again, in the same time frame, 2001, 2002, 2003, for failing to register appropriately in Mississippi. And they haven't yet tagged them for other places. Stop for a second here. This story is wrong, where it says the Clinton charity, then known as lowercase the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. It fooled even the smart investigative reporter. It was never called lowercase the. It was always uppercase the. And the significance of that is when you go fast and loose with that, you can create multiple bank accounts. You create one that has uppercase T, then you go, somebody's not going to notice it as carefully, and you do another one that just has William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. The money that comes into William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, you don't necessarily put it into the foundation. So this is something that it's not minor. And what they're doing here are not petty victimless crimes. If you take a big step back here, you're allowing somebody to stand up, John Hope Bryant, and deceive the world and say, hey, I have this sterling track record. I made so much money legitimately by the time I was 26 that I can retire and spend the rest of my life in charitable activities. Who vetted this dude?
I thought he had a Sterling Crockett track.
That was the other one. And if we go back in for a sec, there are so many highly talented people who come out and start life economically disadvantaged. And the key thing you can do, if you're going to try to intervene or help or motivate or mentor people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, is to help those people try to understand what they're good at and what they're bad at, and do they have the hope? Is there a path they can go down where they can really make the most of their strengths and mitigate their weaknesses? That's responsible mentoring. Going and saying, what you should do is get another credit card or a mortgage to buy a property you can't afford because you don't have income, that is not responsible, okay? And the group of people who've been around the Hope Bryant charities, enabling this, contributing to it, not doing diligence, parting with money when the reports are obviously defective, those people should be ashamed of themselves. Now, who is one of the biggest promoters of this crap? Let's go to the final page. Okay? There's a very large media operation. I've heard of it. I forget what it stands for, Jason. It's something like MSNBC. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I think Rachel Maddow works for those wackos.
Now Phil Griffin, and isn't Phil Griffin the Family Guy? Isn't he
Peter Griffin?
Peter Griffin. He must be Peter's brother.
Exactly.
But Phil Griffin has been the president of MSNBC for a long, long time. And he is I believe, just watching the report, in quotes, reporting of MSNBC, that is no longer and has stopped being a news organization a long time ago. And that's fine. If you want to have a left-leaning, opinion-spewing operation, call it that. And if Fox wants to be a right-leaning, which I don't think it is at this point, opinion-spewing operation, call it that. And people have plenty of options to watch Fox or watch MSNBC or do whatever they want to do. But an entity with as much power as MSNBC and its sister operation, CNBC, subsidiaries of NBC.
Are they, though? I thought Microsoft owns.
No, Microsoft's out. Microsoft's out. I checked it. They're out. So they're long
too busy
out.
making viruses in China.
But so this guy Griffin is on the board of Operation Hope. Okay, and he should be aware by now of the challenges, to put it politely, that are involved with Operation Hope. Let's hit this here, Jason. If you hit the second link in here, at the top, Hope Global Forum sponsorship. Okay, how is MSNBC described?
Piece of trash.
No, you go down the page or stop.
Media partner.
The only media partner. Okay, and then they have different levels of sponsors. Chick-fil-A Foundation, we're gonna have to check.
Terrible. I hate Chick-fil-A. Salty, dry, terrible.
Yeah, but here you have a bunch of banks, more banks, big banks. J.P. Morgan. I've never heard of MetaBank. AT&T, even more banks.
Delta.
Right, and then supporting operations. You have more banks. Some foundations, universities.
A lot of triangle companies.
Right. These are all big companies who've done no diligence. Now, Promise Homes Company is one of Bryant's companies, his personal companies. Right? And you keep going down the page. This is not, to me, these are people who do not seem to be contributing their money anonymously. These are people who I think are virtue signaling. And they're getting involved with this John Hope Bryant, and it says, look at this. Our annual meeting is now the largest gathering in the world on behalf of empowering poor and underserved communities. It brings together a network of 3,000 decision makers, a vital showcase of thought leadership. So what I think they're doing, this is the classic con man game. where you bring all these people together in a room to get them to feel good about their help with charity. And in reality, what you're doing is you're selling access to those people, to these supposed supporters of a charity that, as far as I can tell, is a fake charity. So how fitting that one of the key players in dispensing fake news is involved promoting the activities of a fake charity. How fitting is that? And how sad is that? And how important might it be for the regulators to pounce on this and say, this has got to stop? Now, one of the ways regulators could do that, MSNBC is owned by NBC, which in turn is owned, if we go back into the, this is saying, get involved so you can get close to our audience, right? You're trying to sell access to senior level people. This is not a way, in my mind, of promoting charitable activities, because if it were, the reports would actually be accurate and on time and not the subject of material revision at this point. So what I've done here is I put in the board of Comcast, which owns NBC. Comcast is a huge company.
Right.
And interestingly, there are many people on the board of Comcast, but I think Phil Griffin's support through MSNBC, his relentless support, naive, to put it in quotes, support for Operation Hope as a trustee, his evident failure to perform his required fiduciary duties, step up to the plate and say, not only am I not going to let MSNBC support this piece of crap, I'm going to put this guy in jail.
Nice. I like it, Charles.
I mean, that's the correct thing to do, which he hasn't done yet. So the question for the Comcast board should be, why has Phil Griffin supported this fraud, this evident charity fraud, for so long? And the people who might be competent, I'm sure there are other people outside the board and maybe on the board who could figure this out. There's a guy here, Sheldon M. Bonowitz, I guess, and he's been on the Comcast board forever. That's a long time to be on a board, 41 years.
How long are people usually on a board?
5. I mean, most people don't like to be on boards because
Why?
there's
They
liability.
just give you money to do
No.
nothing.
See, when there's a problem, you day and night, you have to drop everything, and you can have legal liability, whatever. But this is a guy who was head of a law firm, so he should know something about the law. But more importantly, he's been on numerous charitable and non-governmental operation boards. So Mr. Bonowitz needs to insert his head into this Operation Hope. I know it's a small piece of the pie for Comcast, but reputationally, I don't think it's so small that the head of fake news MSNBC would be so heavily tooth by jowl close to John Hope Bryant and continue to support what looks to me to be an epic charity fraud. And then you have the lead independent director. That's a term of art. That's the person who really is the point person when there are conflicts, is this guy with a lot of executive experience, including experience trying to sweep up Tyco International, which was a fraud, basically. To get rid of the CEO. The CEO went to jail.
Wasn't it something like Enron?
It was exactly in that time frame. So this is somebody who's got mega experience, lots of high job, big name, big CEO jobs, and lots of boards. He needs to insert himself in. Comcast needs to insert itself in. And I think, I don't know what John Hope Bryant's political views are, whether he's a Republican, Democrat. I give a shit. What I care about...
He's probably a Democrat if he's buddies with
I don't
Bill
care.
Clinton, right?
I mean, the point is, I think what I do care about is that charities need to be run lawfully. There's so many good charities. In truth, our country is rich. There's so many people giving money away for worthy causes. It's often tough to find. When you talk to people giving away lots of money, you'll hear it's very tough in this day and age in America to find good projects to support because there's so much work already going on. We have $6.5 trillion a year being spent on government. Then beyond that, our charities, I think, have assets of $5 trillion in total. So lots and lots of money is spent already in pursuit of these worthy causes. It's a shame that this sort of a mess would go on for so long and that so many ostensibly smart people, and there are smart people on the board of Operation Hope, who have not done their homework. There are lawyers and accountants who may have done some homework, but have not wanted to tread into this mess. Yeah. They're going to have to, because it's tied. The Clinton Foundation brags about its ties to this fellow. He's been in numerous additional meetings we're going to talk about in subsequent broadcasts. And it is well past time for the IRS, and if the IRS won't do it, the Department of Justice, and if neither party will do it, we the people have got to rise up and say, look, those who would profit through the operation of a charity, whether it's John Hope Bryant at a minor level compared to the Clintons, or Bill Hillary, I suppose is a good word, Hillary and Chelsea Clinton, people who rise, Bill said he was $16 million in debt when he was at the White House, and now he's worth over $100 million. People who make money off charities are disgusting. That is not what you're supposed to do.
And lying to everybody.
And it doesn't matter, again, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or independent or agnostic about politics. It's just not right, and you need to make examples, not simply of Corinne Brown, a congressperson who was diverting, let's call it $1 million while in office. You can't just go after the small fish here. And you can't just go after John Hope Bryant. If you're going to make an issue of this, you've got to go after the trustees, the donors, and most especially the mentors for John Hope Bryant, Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton. And with that, I yield the balance of my time.
Very senatorial of you. Actually, you remind me, Charles, I've reinstated the kangaroo in
There
protest of the ongoing kangaroo court that is, President Trump is being subjected to.
That's my comfort kangaroo. Makes
Exactly.
me feel better.
Take it on the plane. You don't even need to buy another ticket. Somebody had like an alligator or some little comfort horse on the... I don't know where that ends. But anyway, Charles, it's been a great episode. I hope that people will become sponsors of the show. There's been a decline in sponsorship, from December through January. So maybe people are now getting back into the swing of the things. And people were commenting during the show that they like this model of micro-sponsorship. The idea is we keep away any big corporate sponsor like Microsoft or whoever might own MSNBC, and obviously has a huge influence on what the news will be. By having micro-sponsors who are the viewers themselves, this guarantees that there's no undue outside economic influence. We're hearing from a lot of people, Lee Stranahan and others, who are telling us about some people out there in the world of, social media news broadcasting who perhaps are getting money from places that we didn't know about before. That's something people should know. But people want to become sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth. They're going to enjoy a huge library of sponsor-exclusive content on Patreon and Subscribestar. It's growing all the time. Tomorrow we've got another great episode with Ole Damagard in the morning, and then we've got Jimmy and Joanne Moriarty in the evening. If people missed it last week, we had a guest calling in from the front lines in Tripoli, in Libya. So I don't know if anybody else is doing that. It's an interesting thing. But Charles, I'll see you on Wednesday. Anybody else going to be rolled up and smoked on Wednesday?
We're going to go a different direction on Wednesday, but we've got a lot more to discuss.
Very good. And thanks everybody for watching. Have a great night.